846 AD, Saracen raiders reach Rome itself. They ransack the outskirts of the city. They plunder old St. Peter's Basilica. Ash hanging in the air, stones soaked in blood. The heart of Christendom ripped open. Now hold that image. 2024, Abu Dhabi. A pristine conference hall, camera flashes bouncing off marble. And there's the Pope, beaming, signing something called the Human Fraternity document. Handshakes all around. Standing ovation. Beautiful, right? Here's what was happening at the exact same time. In Nigeria, Christians were being slaughtered. Hundreds of thousands. In Algeria, churches shut down and converted into mosques. In Iran, a Christian who leaves Islam faces execution. And the Vatican's answer? Another photo op. Another warm smile. Another agreement that only one side will ever honor. You would think the Pope of all people would look at that and see the pattern. So why is the man holding the keys actively taking apart his own gates? Here's the thing. They believe handshakes stop bullets. That's the operating delusion behind every interfaith summit, every fraternity pact, every stage photo op between a pope and an imam. Extend the olive branch long enough and surely, the other side will extend one back. Look, I deal in numbers, and the numbers have a verdict. Open Doors World Watch List 2025 documents more than 380 million Christians facing high levels of persecution globally. Let that land. 380 million. That's larger than the entire population of the United States. Hunted, jailed, killed, or terrorized for their faith. Nigeria alone, ranked number 7 on that list, accounted for roughly 70% of all faith-related Christian killings worldwide. In 2024, 3,190 Nigerian believers were martyred. 3,490 human beings. Pew Research Center's December 2024 report confirms the pattern from a different angle. 59 countries, 30% of the 198 nations studied, now impose high or very high government restrictions on religion. The overwhelming majority are Muslim-majority states. Algeria has shuttered most Protestant churches. Iran hands down death sentences to converts. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. During the very years Nigerian Christians were being massacred at record rates, Pope Francis flew to the UAE in 2019, then Morocco, and produced landmark fraternity pacts with Islamic leaders. Grand ceremonies, beautiful declarations of human brotherhood, zero public demands for reciprocity, zero conditions, zero accountability for the thousands of bodies piling up back in Nigeria. The Vatican quietly reframed these mass killings as social conflicts, stripped them of their religious dimension entirely to protect the PR. So let me ask you directly, can Christians build a church in Mecca? Can a Muslim in Saudi Arabia convert to Christianity without risking execution? Do any of these 59 governments extend to Christians the same freedoms that Western nations hand Muslim communities every single day? The answer is a deafening, documented no. And if you've ever felt something was deeply wrong with this arrangement, now you have the receipts. When 380 million people are hunted and 59 governments actively crack down, fraternity pacts don't unlock prison doors. A leader who refuses to demand reciprocity while his own people are slaughtered is handing a permission slip to every persecutor on the planet. But here's what should genuinely unsettle you. All of it, didn't start with one pope having a bad decade. What you're looking at is code that's been running inside the Vatican's operating system for over half a century. Baked in, deliberate. And understanding how that code got written changes everything about what comes next. 1965. Vatican II wraps, and out comes Nostra Aetate. On paper, noble, dialogue, mutual respect. But what it actually did was rewrite the Vatican's institutional DNA. Compromise and accommodation became the default language. And from that moment, the Church surrendered something it had carried for 1,000 years. The ability to name its own threats. Think about what that means. The center of Western Christendom voluntarily dismantled its own mental defenses. No army at the gates. No ultimatum. The leadership class looked at centuries of civilizational boundaries and decided they were embarrassing. Inconvenient for the UN cocktail circuit. Once that switch flipped, the rot compounded generationally. Each wave of leadership inherited the code and ran it unquestioned. Moral clarity got swapped for abstraction. Interfaith harmony. mutual enrichment, brotherhood of all believers. Beautiful phrases, hollow when your own people are hunted across continents. The Vatican Library, the intellectual heart of Catholic civilization, set up dedicated prayer rooms for Muslims. A courtesy. One never reciprocated in any Islamic holy center. Not Mecca, not Medina, nowhere. Leadership didn't flinch. Look, that's what happens when cowardice wears the costume of virtue. They didn't just fail to protect their flock. They convinced themselves that surrender was enlightenment. Now, you might think this is far away. Vatican corridors, European theology. Here's where it hits your driveway. The exact same pattern. Elite accommodation, refusal to name problems, one-way tolerance enforced by shame. It's playing out in your suburbs, your schools, your council meetings right now. Parallel communities forming across Western Sydney, Melbourne's north, Brisbane's corridors. And the people running your institutions are operating from the same playbook the Vatican wrote in 65. You are paying for their cowardice every month with your mortgage, your kids' safety, and the character of the street you live on. So let me paint you the picture, because this stopped being abstract the moment it hit your street. It's 11:30 at night and you're standing in the doorway of your kid's room. Mortgage payment cleared this morning. Another month sorted, baby monitor glowing green. Everything should feel fine. But you look out the window and the street you moved onto 10 years ago doesn't look back the same way. Your gut's not lying to you. That's called pattern recognition. The ABS 2021 census, our own government data, showed Christianity in Australia dropped from 52.1% to 43.9% in 5 years. Over 1 million people wiped from the register. Same window, Islam grew 34%. Across Europe, OIDAC's 2025 report logged 2,211 anti-Christian hate crimes in a single year, 274 personal assaults, 94 church arsons, nearly double the prior year, straight from the file. Now look at the geography. France officially lists over 750 sensitive urban zones, the government's own polite label for neighbourhoods where parallel communities operate by entirely different rules. The UK hosts roughly 85 Sharia councils running alongside civil law. Government acknowledged, published, sitting in plain sight. And when someone pushes back, we saw it sweep through Europe in 2023 and 2024. Blasphemy-related mob violence. Terror plots sparked by Quran burnings. The pattern is screaming at you. Western societies absorb every cultural demand coming through the door, while parallel systems growing inside their own borders reject integration outright. The give runs one direction. Always has. Here's the thing that keeps you awake. And I know it does, because I hear it in every consultation, every DM, every hushed conversation at Saturday barbecues where people glance over their shoulder before they speak. You can see this happening. You feel your neighborhood shifting under your feet. The school your kids attend, the conversations getting quieter, the topics you've learned to skip at work. The rules flex depending on who's doing the asking. And if you dare say it out loud, you get the label bigot, racist, Islamophobe, take your pick. So you stay quiet, you swallow it, you keep paying. If you've watched your own neighborhood change, if you've felt that unspoken pressure that the rules bend differently depending on who you are, drop a comment and tell me exactly what you're seeing. You are not crazy for noticing this, but stay with me. Because everything I've just laid out, the data, the parallel systems, the enforced silence, it all feels like a trap with no way out. Like this is just how it goes from here. Except roughly 1,200 years ago, someone faced a threat that makes all of this look like a noise complaint. And what he did, what he built with his own hands, is the polar opposite of everything the Vatican and its imitators have done since 1965. His name was Leo, Pope Leo IV. And the people running the show today, they'd really prefer you never heard his story. The noise fades, the honking, the sirens, the overlapping languages spilling from those parallel streets. All of it thins to silence. And from somewhere deep in that silence, something else rises. The crack of iron on limestone. A rhythm. Steady. Relentless. Heavy hammers swinging in Mediterranean heat. This is the Vatican Hill. years after the worst attack Western Christendom had ever absorbed, and men are building a wall, shoulders slick with sweat, dust so thick you can taste grit on your tongue. Block after block hauled into place, mortared tight, rising higher every day into watchtowers and battlements thick enough to break a siege. But this wall wasn't born from paranoia. It was born from a nightmare that hit Rome in 846 AD. Saracen raiders, Muslim warbands from North Africa, sailed up the Tiber and struck the outskirts of Rome itself. They looted, they burned, they stormed the old St. Peter's Basilica, the holiest ground in Western Christendom, and stripped the silver straight off its altars, ransacked the tombs, dragged sacred relics through the dirt. The entire Christian world watched its spiritual heart get carved open. Now, Pope Leo IV could have done what every Vatican leader has done since 1965. He could have convened a council, issued a carefully worded statement about mutual respect and shared humanity, arranged a photo with the very people who just desecrated his most sacred ground. He didn't do any of that. Here's what he did. He walked through the wreckage. He looked at the scorched stone where the basilica's treasures had stood for centuries. He looked at the shattered walls. And he made the kind of decision that modern leadership has completely forgotten how to make. He built a wall, the Leonine walls, a physical, towering fortification of stone and Roman mortar encircling the entire Vatican Hill, named after the man with enough spine to order them raised. And here's the detail they really don't want you sitting with. The prisoners captured from that same Saracen raid. Leo put them to work, hauling the blocks, mixing the mortar, their hands, their sweat, their broken backs under the Italian sun, building the very wall designed to keep their own forces out. Forever. That is what protection looks like when a leader genuinely believes his people are worth defending. No interfaith summit, no groveling apology for existing, granite, iron, and the unshakable certainty that openness without strength is nothing but vulnerability. Those walls stood for centuries. They held, they worked. Built by a man who understood something brutally simple. You do not negotiate with someone who just burned your altar. You make sure they can never reach it again. And look, this is the part that stays with me. Leo raised those walls to shield every family, every church, every child sleeping inside that perimeter. The people running the show today, they build walls too. Tall ones, around their own estates, their own gated communities, their own children's private schools, just not around yours. So let's get specific. Do they tear down their own walls? Do they send their kids to the schools in those parallel communities? Do they walk their own streets at night without private security on speed dial? You already know the answer, and they demand open doors for you while deadbolting their own. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. When you notice it, when you feel that knot in your gut watching your own neighborhood shift in ways nobody voted for, they don't protect you. They diagnose you. Bigot, racist, Islamophobe. Pick your label. They've got a whole drawer full. That's the gaslighting. The people with the most to lose, there's so many, your mortgage, your family, your kids walk home from school, are told their survival instincts are a character defect by people who will never spend a single night living with the consequences of their own policies. You would think they'd at least look at the numbers. But here's the thing, they absolutely refuse to acknowledge. In 2006, Gaddafi stood on camera and told the world, direct quote, "We have 50 million Muslims in Europe. Allah will grant Islam victory in Europe without swords, without guns, without conquest, within a few decades." That's not a fringe radical in a basement. That's a sitting head of state broadcasting demographic strategy to an international audience. A decade later, Erdogan told Muslim families in Europe, "Have not 3 but 5 children. You are the future of Europe." On the record, on camera, searchable. And what did the Vatican do with that information? In 2019, Pope Francis flew to Abu Dhabi and signed a fraternity pact with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, staged the photo op, shook hands behind the same Leonine walls that were literally built to stop Islamic invasions, and called it enlightenment. The people who were supposed to guard the gate opened it from the inside, then shamed you for feeling the draft. So, where does that leave us? If the ones holding the walls have already surrendered them willingly, what line can the person actually paying the price every single month, still draw? There's a principle. Churchill put it in terms so cold and so precise, it cuts through everything we've just talked about. And it might be the most necessary thing you hear today. An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. Churchill? Cold, surgical, and absolutely correct. That's the law operating underneath everything we've talked about tonight. You don't negotiate with something that's already swallowing you. You don't hand over another piece of yourself hoping it'll slow down. It won't. It never has. Feeding the crocodile buys you one thing: a later slot on the menu. And look, 388 million Christians now targeted across the globe. 59 countries where the state itself enforces the persecution. The crocodile is feeding, right now. Every handshake without conditions, every fraternity pact with zero reciprocity, every door thrown open with no right to ask who's walking through. That's another offering tossed straight into the mouth. Here's the thing, you already know this. You've felt it in your gut for years. The squeeze getting tighter, the goalposts shifting, the quiet erosion of everything you built and everything you were promised would hold. And the people who were supposed to hold the line, they folded, called it enlightenment, built their own walls, just not around you. So the question tonight is simple. What are you going to do about the ground you still stand on? Drawing a line. That's called responsibility. Setting a boundary. That's parenting. Saying no to an arrangement that only ever moves in one direction. That might be the last sane act left for anyone who gives a damn about what their kids inherit. You possess the moral right to defend your space, your home, your community, the street your children walk down every morning. Nobody handed you that right. You earned it. Every mortgage payment, every school drop-off, every sleepless night wondering if the rules still apply to the people making the rules. If this hit you the way it hit me, subscribe. Stay, because I am not done talking about this. And I'd rather stand ground beside you than stay polite about what's coming.